Good Tuesday afternoon, everybody, and welcome back, Matthew. Free agency signing, a bunch of crazy stuff going on. It can't be official till tomorrow, but man, there's a lot of money being tossed around.
Yeah, there is. The Raiders have made a significant investment, obviously
Hmm.
looking for who you would assume is going to be Fernando Mendoza as a
Hmm.
first pick in the draft. They made a lot of their investments on the defensive side of the ball,
Yeah.
and just him feel more comfortable.
Well, I believe they're making a smart move. Build the offensive line so your quarterback has a good chance of of succeeding.
Yeah, it was interesting how much money they paid Tyler Linderbaum,
Yeah.
because there's a significant gap between how much he's making and the second highest paid center in the league.
Right.
But it was an investment that they felt was worthwhile,
Hmm.
given that they're going to have a young rookie quarterback that's going to be their investment long term.
Hmm.
And on the other side of it, that's a big loss for the Ravens. And specifically, it kind of makes you question what they're thinking, because Lamar Jackson was not healthy last year. Lamar Jackson's health has been something that is a key concern given the way that he
Hmm.
plays quarterback. And I think it's interesting that they were losing what was a key piece of that offensive line from last year.
Hmm. Well, and look, their window of opportunity is only as good as basically Lamar Jackson. And at this point, if he's not making the whole season, which he doesn't, now they did re-sign Snoop Huntley. I'm a little curious because we'll get to it in a second with Malik Willis going to Miami. I'm a little curious as to why Snoop didn't test the free agency.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of him not doing
Hmm.
that, just because you would think that there would probably be a pretty big payday out there waiting on him.
Hmm.
But there's also the other side of, this is not a very strong quarterback draft class.
Hmm.
You could turn around next year and potentially be looking at something similar.
Hmm.
And so it's something where maybe he's okay with the situation that he's in, and he's okay making the good money. Like, backup quarterback in the NFL is a pretty good job to have, all things
Right.
considered.
Hmm.
So it's it's something that, it's more of a long term move, I think, for him, as opposed to really what is going to be a relative uncertainty. Because yes, um, Malik Willis is in Miami, but Tua landed in Atlanta. Like, that's where
I
he
was about
is.
to ask you about that.
Yeah, which is, it's interesting, but the way the quarterbacks are moving, it's an interesting market. I would say, at best.
We got Kyler Murray went to Detroit.
Kyler Murray went to Detroit.
I think that's where is it? Hang on. I'm checking. Uh, we had obviously Malik went to Miami. Tua up to Atlanta. Geno Smith went back to the Jets. Evidently, they had buyer's remorse. I don't know. All right, let me see. Kyler Murray. I had, maybe it was a uh, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray. No. I'm sorry, he did not. Uh, it says here that Detroit is contemplating Kyler Murray.
Which is an interesting, I guess the question there would be on both sides of it. If you're Detroit, uh, I guess that's probably one of the best backup options that would be available on the market. But then on the other side, if you're Kyler Murray, why would you go to Detroit, a place that has Jared Goff, that's been their starter, and as opposed to, and now granted, this requires the team as well to be interested, but like, Minnesota seems to be the pretty cut and dry location that everybody
Yeah.
agrees is the best for Kyler Murray.
Hmm.
Um, So it would be curious if he went to somewhere like Detroit where there isn't really an opportunity waiting for him. When you think about Minnesota and you think about what Kevin O'Connell has done with the quarterbacks over the last years,
Hmm.
I know last year wasn't good, but I mean, it, as a credit to them, they did have to use J.J. McCarthy as their starting quarterback, and when it wasn't him, it was Carson Wentz. So they weren't exactly given
Hmm.
a good hand, anyways. And the pedigree that O'Connell has with quarterbacks, it seems like the perfect place for him to go and revive his career. Because I still am a big believer in what Kyler Murray can do at the quarterback position
Hmm.
and the kind of athlete that he is. But I think he needs the right place and the right tools around him, and Minnesota gives him that opportunity.
I think you're right. I think he's going to go to Minnesota. Um, the there's been talk in Pittsburgh that Justin Fields, who right now is under contract to the Jets, but they expect he's going to get released, will come back to Pittsburgh.
That's an interesting one. I wonder if Pittsburgh's also it's something that's been talked about that Aaron Rodgers coming back is another option for Pittsburgh. It's
Yeah.
something that they're considering, and I'm sure if Aaron Rodgers, calls Mike McCarthy and tells him, "Hey, I'm coming," that's
Mhm.
most likely going to be their starting quarterback next year. But I think Justin Fields going there is a good move. It's still he's still a guy that's young enough that he again he needs a good situation. And the New York Jets, I mean, for what it's worth, I don't think it matters who you are playing quarterback. When you go to New York, you just can't play anymore for some
Mhm.
reason. And I mean, same can be true for Aaron Rodgers in his time there.
Right.
So it's such a bad place for quarterbacks that you may look at it like people may look at that and go, well, like how is that a viable option? Well, it's a
Mhm.
viable option because you kind of diversify your quarterback room. Because if you have Will Howard and you have Justin Fields, even if Aaron Rodgers does come back for another year, that gives those
Mhm.
two guys an extra year, and they will compete for that
Mhm.
job at that point. And you have two different styles of quarterback at that point in
Mhm.
that room as well.
Yep. And the other thing with Justin was 4-2 with Pittsburgh. He had 1,106 passing yards, 10 touchdowns during that stretch.
Hmm.
A lot of people felt that one of the problems that Mike Tomlin had was he wasn't willing to. He never really enjoyed rookie slash quarterbacks who only had a few games under the belt. He didn't want to develop a quarterback, and
Yeah.
so Justin, in his own mind, and for good reason, who, as I said, he was 4-2 when Russ came, and Russell Wilson. I, I think that Justin felt, look, I don't know what I have left to prove. We're 4-2. We did a pretty darn good job, and he got benched. So, at the end of the day, I think you're right. I mean, look, if Aaron Rodgers is going to play again, it's going to be in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Yeah. And
If he's going to play, Will Howard is there too.
mhm. Yeah, and I,
Mhm.
I'm still not fully like I still am of the belief that when if or when Aaron Rodgers decides that he does not want to play quarterback anymore, that Will Howard is going to get a shot to be the starting quarterback in Pittsburgh, regardless of whether or not they sign Justin Fields.
Mhm. No, I think he's going to get a shot. Now, a lot of people think Kirk Cousins could go back to Minnesota. I'm not sure that's something that is going to happen. Or he could show up in the Jets. So we'll have to keep our eye on that. Now, let's take a quick look at
Just
the.
gonna. Oh,
Uh,
am I back?
yeah, you're back.
Okay, sorry. I had something pop up. I'm on my phone and somebody called me.
Oh, okay.
Um, but But I think at least on the larger point for
Hmm.
Kirk Cousins Atlanta does have to get him out,
Hmm.
um, because that quarterback room right now
Hmm.
is they're paying a lot of people some pretty significant money for none of them to be really good quarterbacks right now. You've got a really expensive and relatively ineffective quarterback room in Atlanta.
Well, I mean, you got Tua for cheap. Okay, Tua's playing for the minimum, which is $1.3 million, because Miami ate his contract. As a matter of fact, it was the largest chunk of dead money in the history of the NFL of $99 million. That's what they took in the way of a cap hit.
And I think it now highlights the point of how much not only do they believe in Malik Willis, but Malik Willis has to pan out for them, because this is something now where, yes, you paid the money to Malik Willis, but that money that they're paying to Tagovailoa is also essentially an investment in Malik Willis as well.
Yeah, but you put yourself in cap hell. In that, I don't see how they build around him at this point. So, and it is what it is. But Miami, look, they probably could have traded him and got some of that money off the books, but just to dump him into and eat the 99 million just makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan, because it's something where you could probably have attached, like, if you traded Tua and you attached a pick to him, then they would be more apt to eat more money, most likely. It's definitely a move that you could have done. It would have given you a little bit more financial flexibility to be able to build the roster around that quarterback that you believe in so much. Because this isn't like them eating that money isn't something that's different. They traded away Minkah Fitzpatrick as well, and the return on that wasn't very good. But again, it got another large contract off the books. So I'm I guess intrigued would be the word about their strategy.
Here's the contracts that have been signed as of this morning. The top 5. Jaelan Phillips to the Panthers, 3 years, $120 million, $80 million guaranteed. Alec Pierce re-signs with the Colts, 4 years, $114 million, $84 million guaranteed. Odafe Oweh of the Commanders, 4 years, $100 million, $68 guaranteed. Tyler Linderbaum to the Raiders, 3 years, $81 million, $60 guaranteed. And Wan'Dale Robinson to the Titans, 4 years, $70 million, $38 guaranteed. Now, when you see a contract, I'll give you a little inside business of sports here. The NFL has some very bizarre ways of doing their contracts. When he signed, let's use Phillips for example, $120 million with $80 guaranteed. Okay, the theory is 80 is guaranteed. There are exception bonuses, right? Making tackles, yardage gain, yards passed, whatever. If you meet those goals, you get more money. So in 3 years, the situation is Phillips could make up to $120 million, but only 80 of it is guaranteed. So when you hear a contract in baseball and basketball, that's all guaranteed money. In football, ironically, where people play for less years, they don't have there are very few guaranteed contracts. I'll put it that way. I'm not going to say there's none, because that's not true. But if I had to guess on how much, I would say 75% of the contracts in the NFL are this type of contract, where it is you get a base salary of $80 million and you can make $120 million. Will they usually get to those numbers? 9 times out of 10, no, they don't. Okay, so when you see $120 million or any 10 million for that matter, look for what the guarantee money is, because that's where the money is. That's the true value of the contract.
Yeah, and that's it, it's something where it makes a little more sense when these numbers are tossed out when
Hmm.
you look at it through that lens. Like when you look at it and you see Alec Pierce is getting paid, what was it, like $144 million or
Right.
some number from the Colts. You're like, wow, that's a lot of money for a guy in Alec Pierce who,
Hmm.
although he's been good at times, he hasn't been extremely consistent and he hasn't reached a relative ceiling yet. But then you look down, guaranteed money is only $60 million. So it's a little bit more of a reasonable investment for Indianapolis on guys like that. So the numbers will look large, but they aren't exactly always exactly that.
Well, and you've got like Malik Willis signed with the Dolphins for 67.5. His contract will pay him approximately an average of $22.5 million per year. However, only 47 of that million, 47, only 47, only 47 million is guaranteed. So that's 67. He's got $20 million that over a 3 year period. If he hits those marks, he's got a shot. So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's something that a lot of guys and like I think it makes a little more sense when you go back and like you think about the Deshaun Watson contract and why was it so unprecedented is because all of the money was guaranteed in it. It wasn't incentive based. But for these guys, if Malik Willis really believes in himself, then yeah, load that thing up with incentives, and I'll go out there and I'll earn my own money, basically.
What about yours? I guess they forgot about him.
Yeah, well, I just don't know if I, I'm curious if that wasn't something along the lines of Mike McDaniel. Like, because since there's been
Mhm.
regime change in Miami, there's a very real chance that Quinn Ewers is just, you know, he's not.
Collateral damage, huh?
Yeah, he's collateral. There you go. I was looking for a phrase and I just could not find it. Yeah, he's collateral damage in that because it's very big. The NFL is a very egotistical business. It's they like their guys and their people. So
Mhm.
when regime change happens, a lot of the time, if things that means things didn't go well, and even if maybe you kind of the last team, even if your quarterback played fairly well, you
Mhm.
probably are not going to want that. You want to start something fresh. You want to start something new. You want to start with your guy. And for Miami, Malik Willis is their guy.
Mhm. Well, we'll see. We'll definitely see. Interesting enough, for those of you keeping score out there, the team that spent the most money in the offseason last year was the Seattle Seahawks. And the team that spent the fourth most money out there in the free agent market was the New England Patriots. So there you go. A little bit of that.
Yeah,
Mike Evans moves on from Tampa Bay to the 49ers. Uh, and,
that
you know,
seems like an interesting landing spot for him.
I think it's a smart landing spot for him. Kyle Shanahan runs a very, um, I guess the best way of putting it, Evans fits his offense because Evans is a possession receiver, and Kyle runs a very tight possession offense. I
Hmm.
mean, they'll let it go deep 4 or 5 times a game, but for the most part, they're dinking and dunking you down the field. And I think that I think his best days are behind him. Uh, there's no doubt that he played a tremendous role in Tampa Bay and is a Hall of Fame wide receiver. I just think he felt like he needed a change of scenery, and
Yeah,
whether that's him in bowls or whatever, he's not the kind of guy who complains. So you're never going to hear him say, "Well, this is why I didn't do it because I didn't think that I was being respected or making money or blah blah blah." None of that's going to happen. Uh, and I don't think he's going to play 3 years. So the deal that he signed in San Francisco He's a good guy. Good on him. I wish him nothing but the best. I know the Buccaneers wanted to get younger at wide receiver, and so I think that move. It's one of those ones where the fans are, for the most part, the fans are like, you know what, good on him. He did very well for us. He was, one of our star players for a number of years, and they just couldn't come to a number that you know, would be sensible for both sides.
Yeah, and it's something where I think there's very much potentially an aspect in this of
Mhm.
the way these last couple of years have gone and the way he's
Mhm.
been injured is
Yeah.
sometimes with injuries and stuff like that, it can make you want a change of scenery.
Mhm.
As much as he may have liked Tampa and he may have been
Mhm.
wanting to stay in Tampa slightly. I'm sure there's some part of him that's kind of ready to move on to a different location because now you've looked at it and while yes, in totality it's still a fantastic career, these last couple of years in Tampa Bay haven't been the easiest for him. And then on the
Mhm.
other side for Tampa Bay, you look at the receiver core and really two of the biggest guys they've been banking on for the last couple of years are Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Just neither
Mhm.
one of them could stay healthy, and they suffered for it on the field.
Yeah. And look, Jason Light drafted him, so um, I think what Jason was looking at and saying, look, Mike, we're not going to give you a 3-year contract, um, and here's what we'll pay you. And it wasn't what Mike thought was a good deal. So um, there wasn't any animosity. As a matter of fact, there was a love fest of the front office saying what a tremendous job he did and how they hope he has success in San Francisco. So there's no animosity between the two sides. I just think it's one of those things where, um, it's time to move on. And the other element there, and this is not just football, it can be in many different sports, is um, the element of okay, what's going on here is um, we need to, we need your spot basically,
Hmm.
and if that means you have to leave, okay, so be it. Well, no harm, no foul. We'll tip our cap to you and wish you the best. And I think that's what's gone on with Mike, is that you know Jason looked at that and said, you know what, we can take that money, we're going to pay him and invest it in defense,
Hmm.
which is where they need it. That every team, no matter who they are, you got 53 guys on the team. To win a championship, to consistently be competitive, you have to look and make decisions that are sometimes hard to make. I don't think, in a perfect world, you know, he would have stayed in Tampa and retired a Buccaneer. All right.
Hmm.
But it's not a perfect world. You just have to, sometimes you have to look at your bottom line and how many players are on your team. I got
Yeah.
53 spots. I need defense. I can take the money that I would have invested in Mike and put it to the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and you
And
look
those
at
are
it
the
in a
kind of
way.
decisions that every team in the NFL has to make those kind of decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, and you look at it from Tampa Bay's side of things, and Mike
Mhm.
Evans was not going to be like he wasn't a cheap receiver in terms
Mhm.
of what he was doing, and I think they thought his production and injury history at the price tag he was asking for was probably going to be a little bit too high.
Mhm.
You mentioned defense. You would assume that, and now granted, you're able to kind of fill in some of the gaps as we head
Mhm.
towards the draft based on what teams do in free agency.
Mhm.
But if they don't go out and they don't sign a guy, it's something where they're going to be picking in the top half of the draft,
Mhm.
and they could very easily be looking towards receiver, and
Mhm.
either in the first or second round there.
Yeah, and they got some good young receivers on the team already.
Yeah, Tez Johnson played really well
Mhm.
at times at the end of last year.
Yeah, and what's the kid from Ohio State uh, that
Egbuka or
yeah,
Abuka.
yeah, Abuka played. for many games, Abuka was their top receiver.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he actually filled
Yeah.
in for Mike. So
Yeah. And he played.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, he did play very well at the first half of the season.
Mhm.
I think it did have a little bit to do with injuries towards the back half, but he did kind of taper off towards the back half. So, but
Mhm.
they're banking on what they believe is going to be a full season of Mecca Ibuka
Mhm.
and an injury-free season at that, and
Yeah.
that they're going to get that first half of the year version of him throughout the entire season.
Well, ironically, and this is kind of a funny situation, is that you know Hartline, his offensive coordinator and receiver coach at Iowa State, is now USF's head football coach. So he's been working out with USF with Bryant.
Yeah, and I mean that's part of that's just how good of a recruiter that Brian Hartline is, and
Hmm.
that really just speaks to the relationships that he developed while he was the receivers
Hmm.
coach and offensive coordinator at Ohio State.
Yeah, he has it, and think of if you're a kid, right, and you just got to college and you're playing, for USF or many of these universities, but you have a coach who can, pull over and grab a premier young talent like Abuka, and you can learn what you can learn from him. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it. Yeah, I mean that's big. That's big in terms of him building that program at USF and what he's going to be able to
Mhm.
do with some of those connections with his past and what
Mhm.
he's how he's been able to build those relationships and the way that his players talk about him as well.
Mhm. It's going to be fun to see how that whole thing plays out. But
Mhm.
no, Becca Abuka is is going to be taking Mike Evans's place, and
Yeah,
we'll see where they invest that money. It's the same situation where, we're going to see how if Miami jettisons all this money, the dead cap, right?
hmm
Where are they going to spend their money? And I
yeah,
think that's going to be curious. Where's Jacksonville going to spend their money? Where there's a lot of teams out there that are think they're on the cusp of being contenders.
yeah,
Where do they spend that money?
yeah.
And I think
Well,
that's going to be very interesting.
well, quite honestly, it may not matter next year in the NFL because the Rams went out and they not only did they address their largest need and biggest area of concern coming
Hmm.
out of last year, they nailed it. They took the top two corners from the Kansas City Chiefs, and I say took. They did make one trade. They signed Jalen Watson, traded for
Hmm.
Trent McDuffie. But I mean, they that was their largest hole. That was their
Hmm.
biggest problem last year,
Yep.
and now it's just no more. And you look at that team, and the way that they played last year, and really how close they were to beating Seattle. It almost felt like they were the better team, even though they didn't come out on top. So it's something where they're going to be. I would be very surprised if they were not the betting favorites for this to win the Super Bowl coming into the season.
Well, it's Los Angeles, right? The
Yeah.
Dodgers, the Lakers, and now the Rams. Well, I'll tell you what. If it's me right now and I had to put any money down, I'd put it down on the Rams. I thought they were the best team last year.
Yeah, yeah, I would too. And I think a lot of that has to do with talked about the different types of quarterbacks earlier. The
Hmm.
type of quarterback that Matthew Stafford is, it allows him like yeah, he's going to be what is it going to be 38 years old next year,
Something like
next
that.
season.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I'm not concerned even in the slightest about his age. Relatively speaking, he doesn't have a horrible injury history, and the way he plays quarterback, it's all on that right arm, and that right arm is still in fantastic condition. So as long as they're able to block for him, then they should have no problems next year.
Well, if you look at him and you look at guys like Aaron Rodgers, Ben Roethlisberger, and guys like that. Guys who stayed in the league. And I'm not putting in Brady in there because Brady doesn't play the kind of game those guys play.
Yeah.
Um, so, but if you look at how they play, I could see Matt Stafford starting it, for the Rams in his 40s.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's something at that point where it would be, because I think he's talked about this before, is
Mm-hmm.
he does have a family. And I think if he doesn't play into his 40s, that's going to be purely a him decision.
Yeah, and I think that one of the other things that Matt um, has going for him is he's a very personable guy, and I think
Hmm.
that you know there's no doubt in my mind that the moment he walks off of the SoFi Stadium turf and decides to hang up the shoes, that he will be in some way, shape, or form involved in the broadcasting business. He's a very articulate guy. He's got a good sense of humor, and I think that, which by the way, I don't know that many people realize he does, but he does have a good sense of humor and a great personality. So I would be surprised, like you were talking. I'd be stunned if he didn't, walk off the field and right into a broadcast. And the fact that in the parking lot, almost not exactly in the parking lot, but close to the parking lot of SoFi Stadium, just happens to be NFL Network. So, he can take a golf cart from the stadium over to the NFL Network. So, wouldn't have to go
Yeah.
far. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So, moving on. Last night, Mexico and USA plays in the World Baseball Classic, and there was a bit of a post-game row between teammates, Randy Rosarena and Cal Raleigh.
Yeah. I mean, look, everybody's concerned. Everybody's chief concern coming into the World Baseball Classic, at least if you're a manager, front office, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, even fans, is you hope these guys don't get hurt going
Mm-hmm.
into your season. This is the next worst thing possible, because
Mm-hmm.
this is now something where they are going to have to sit down and work that out, because
Mm-hmm.
Randy Rosarena was very upset. He's been a relatively emotional guy for most of his career,
Mm-hmm.
and that helps him a lot, and it makes for some great moments because he's had plenty
Mm-hmm.
of them. But this is something where, yeah, you got to give it a little bit of time, but cooler heads are going to have to prevail, because the Seattle Mariners are all in on this season, and
Mm-hmm.
they have a team that can compete for a World Series. But
Sure.
when you have something like that, if it's brewing underneath the surface, that can tear down a team worse than just not having a complete roster can.
Just for those of you who didn't hear what happened, at the first at bat when Rosarena came to the plate, he, I mean, he's looking down at the guy who's his teammate, his catcher,
Hmm.
Cal Raleigh. Puts his hand out to shake hands. Raleigh doesn't acknowledge it, says something, and Rosarena got pissed and you know didn't attack, didn't approach it then, but in the post game situation, didn't have any kind words for his teammate.
Yeah,
It's kind of subsided a bit,
yeah,
but um, again, as you say, a Rosarena plays like a number of Latin players play, and that's you know, they're all out. They never stop. They got a motor that runs all the time. They play on emotion. They absolutely have. They feed
hmm,
off of it,
yeah,
and
and
you don't have to. You don't have to be a body language expert to understand if Randy Rosarena is ticked off.
hmm,
And I
yeah,
don't know what's up with Cal. I mean, Cal, I've never heard a bad word about either of the guys. So,
yeah,
whatever it is between them, I have not got a clue. But you're
yeah,
absolutely right. You can't go in and have a clubhouse disaster, of which, by the way, had nothing to do with the club.
yeah, yeah. That's the worst part. And on the other side of it too, because I didn't say this in that first little run,
Mhm.
but if you're Cal Raleigh, why the hell did you not just shake his hand? Like, that is your teammate. Like,
Right.
I don't get the. I understand like the heat of the competition or
Mhm.
this that and the other but still it's like this is still a game. It's still an exhibition game at
Mhm.
that. If you really want to look at it from that angle, and why you wouldn't just shake your teammate's hand
Mhm.
since he like put his hand out. I don't really understand. And to be honest with you, like I said, Randy Rosarena is upset and he was
Mhm.
emotional, but maybe it was a little over the top, but it still is understandable. Because in fairness, I don't get why Cal Raleigh didn't shake his hand either.
Well, and then there's the other. I mean, you got how many times have we seen? Like I remember um, when Pujols had gotten signed by the Angels,
Hmm.
and just so happened they played the Cardinals in interleague play, and Benji Molina, catcher for the Cardinals at the time. I remember when the first time Albert came to the plate and they give him a standing ovation, he tips his hat and he reaches over and he taps, you know, he taps him his the catcher on the helmet, and Molina reaches up and gives him a they fist bump in that regard. So it's like,
Hmm.
you know, I get it. We're still friends. There's a lot of players, either they've been traded or they've known each other for a long time. It's not, sports is that way. I mean, you're going to play against guys you've played against either in high school, college, or in some cases in pros. You've had friendships with them. There's no reason for you not to have a friendship with them,
Hmm.
when you're playing against them. And this
Yeah,
is an exhibition situation. So
yeah,
I have no idea what Cal was thinking. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe he just didn't think it was a big deal. Maybe he just said, we don't even know what he said to Randy. He
yeah,
might have said, hey, good to see you, whatever it was. But it did. We'll have to. It's something that we'll have to pay attention to. I guess is the best way of
yeah,
putting it.
yeah. Look, in all fairness, is you don't get to pick your teammates.
Nope.
You don't. There's probably going to be ones that you like, others that you
Mm-hmm.
don't like. But what you
Right.
cannot let happen is even if you're not like the biggest fan of the guy or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, is
Sure.
you cannot let that work its way into the clubhouse and into
Mm-hmm.
that locker room and out onto the field because can it can create something larger than what it is if it is not addressed properly.
Yeah. If you look at the teams that are successful, most of them are pulling for each other all the time. And I think that's why the Dodgers have been successful. They've had that situation. You can look back at when Big Poppy was with the Red Sox. That was a family type situation. I mean, successful teams have always been teams. I remember interviewing Jim Palmer one time, and I said, I asked him what was the difference between the time he played versus, these days. And he said some teams are 25 independent contractors.
Yeah.
And he said they're not. It's not a team. The moment the game is over, they go. Everybody gets in the car, and goes home.
Hmm.
And he said,
Well,
that's not what we did when we were playing together.
yeah, and that's what we talked about it with the Mets and
Mm-hmm.
the way their season went last year, and
Mm-hmm.
how that it almost had that a little bit of that feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
And on the backside, when they signed Freddie Peralta, or not signed, when they traded for Freddie Peralta,
Mm-hmm.
part of the big plus of trading for Freddie Peralta is yes, you get your number one pitcher that you know is getting the ball on opening day, but on the backside of that, you also get a guy who, when he was in Milwaukee, was a really, really good clubhouse guy, and he's got the Latin descent as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor and some of those guys it seems like something that's going to make the Mets clubhouse a lot better. And
Mm-hmm.
it goes back to that shifting away from that thought process of because they did spend a lot of money, and there's a lot of guys on that team that are getting paid a whole lot. And sometimes egos get involved, and that can work its way in. And I think their clubhouse is going to be a lot better this year, and they're probably going to be a better team for it.
Yeah, tonight, let's run through this real quick. Israel and the Netherlands play each other. That's on the Fox app. On Tubi, which is free, by the way, in case you don't know that, folks. You can download it on your phone or on your smart TV. It's Canada, who's 1-1, taking on Puerto Rico, who's 3-0. That's on Tubi. That game is at 7 p.m. At 9 p.m., Italy faces the United States. That's an FS1 game. Czechia and Japan played early this morning, with Japan winning that game handily by a score of 9-0. And let's go down here. Now we're popping over to the Grapefruit League, where the Red Sox are trailing the Tigers by a score of 7-2. The Twins are beating the Rays 6-3. The Nationals are beating the Marlins by the same score, 6-3. Orioles and Astros are tied 6-all. We're getting warm-ups for the games that will start in about another 25 minutes or so. The Diamondbacks are going to face the Dodgers. Tyler Glasnow is going to be throwing today for only the second time this season, spring training season. Rangers Cubs, that game is in warm-ups White Sox Athletics. Reds and Rockies, Mariners and Royals, Giants and Guardians, Padres and Angels. And we have a couple of finals. The Yankees beat the Phillies in Clearwater by a score of 4-2. The Braves got shut out by the Blue Jays in Dunedin, 7-0. And the Mets in Port St. Lucie beat the Cardinals by a score of 6-1. So that's your Major League Baseball scoreboard and what you're looking forward to tonight in the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah, I what I will say is I've been very pleased with I've chronicled it many times here how the Red Sox had their need for a big bat. That was the main talking point of the offseason for them, is they were looking for that hole. If they've sent some of their best players, they're out on the World Baseball Classic right now, and they're playing fantastic. I mean, the USA and Mexico game, I think, is the best encapsulation of that, because you had Jarren Duran hit 2 home runs and Roman Anthony hit a massive 3-run shot that put the U.S. out in front. So their best are playing, and it's been really nice to see, because you also go overseas to Japan, and Masataka Yoshida, a guy that really he's struggled between injuries and stuff like that. He's not been a guy that people have been very fond of, but if he plays the way that he's been playing in this World Baseball Classic at Fenway Park, people are going to love this guy.
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons to love what they've got going on in Boston with the youth movement up there. I think that's a really cool setup for them, and you want to be able to root and see these young guys, right? I remember, and this again dates me, but I remember when I was in Winter Haven, when 2 guys that were really good players, but they had to crack a lineup that was tough to crack, was Freddie Lynn and Jim Rice. And the decision was, what do we do with these guys, right? They're talented, but do we play them? And you only had to see one spring training game, if you were there and knew anything about baseball, to know that Jim Rice and Freddie Lynn were ready for the show. And fortunately for the Red Sox at that time, they were smart enough to take them up to the majors, and away they went. And both those
Yeah.
guys were phenomenal players. Um, so yeah, it was. And you had basically Dwight Evans was still around at that point playing right field. One of the things I've never understood how how people didn't appreciate Dwight Evans as much as I thought they should because of the phenomenal uh, phenomenal glove work. He was a tremendous right fielder.
Yeah, well, I think the problem there is that typically sometimes if guys are really good defensively, even if
Hmm.
they've got like if they have a pretty good bat, that
Hmm.
that fielding's typically going to get overlooked in favor of thinking about the way
Hmm.
he swings it.
Hmm. But I mean, he didn't have his arm was not quite a plus arm, but what he did do is he positioned himself after the catch to make a stronger throw than you would expect him to make because he had set it all up. And so
Yeah,
he played right field like a chess master. And I'll tell you what, it is not easy to play right field in Fenway Park.
no, it's long since said that it Fenway Park, specifically the Boston Red Sox, is you have to basically have two center. That right field area is just big. The way it opens
Mhm.
up into that corner, and then you pair
Yeah.
that with and I know it doesn't really leak into right field as much, but that
Mhm.
triangle can be tough if you get it back there. And there's certain cutoff lanes and stuff like that. You have to play differently when you play right field in Boston than you do right field at pretty much every other ballpark in the country.
Yeah, if you hit it in that triangle, there's a very good chance that while it's a center fielder's ball, but if the center fielder misses it, it ricochets into right field pretty quick.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, it absolutely can. And so it's something that is not an easy defensive assignment. It's something also where it's I would say it's even more impressive that in his first two full years at the major league level, Wilyer Abreu has won back-to-back Gold Gloves playing
Hmm.
right field in Fenway Park.
Joe Castiglione asked him about what the out playing the outfield at Fenway was like. He goes, "It's like playing baseball in a pinball machine." Um, he goes, "You have no idea." He goes, "The ball could bounce off the monster. You know, you've got those gates that are out there in center field and left center field out there. The balls can
Hmm.
bounce off the gates. You've got you've got the triangle that we spoke about just a second ago. You've got the short fences. You got all kinds of crazy going on out there. So yeah, I mean, you to play outfield in Fenway Park. I'll tell you what, I don't envy the young players who are coming in from another team who've never played there before, wondering where do I start, where do I play.
Yeah, I mean it's really baptism by fire. If you're really relatively young and you're playing in Fenway for what may be your first time, it can lead to some big time mistakes in the way you play balls.
Yeah.
A guy who plays there every day, if you kind of know what that corner is going to do out there,
Mhm.
and so you're able to play it, and so you can stop a double from turning into a triple. But it's a certain it's a certain home field factor that
Mhm.
can benefit the Red Sox because they know how to play it. And why between not only between right field but left field as well, the entire
Mhm.
outfield, the angles that it can produce, it's not an easy outfield to play defensively.
No, and even that little area of the stands that jets out a bit from from down the line. So if you
Hmm.
get the ball and it hits in fair and then rolls, into foul territory, it can just ricochet off that. And what you think is going to go to left field is now going, you know, back toward back toward the infield,
Mm-hmm.
in the shortstop area. So no, I think Joe's pinball analogy probably is about as close as I've ever heard to what it's like to play outfield in Fenway Park.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's the perfect analogy for it.
Mhm. All right. Well, let's see. We got a whole bunch of tournaments, college tournaments we can start getting to tomorrow. The women's tournaments are getting moving on, and we're starting to fill out the field in the men's March Madness as things get a little closer, and things are going to start getting very interesting this weekend and all next week. So we're going to talk a little hoops tomorrow. Any final thoughts before we get out of here, sir?
Uh, Boy, I've been really impressed. And which this is kind of the way that you figured it was going to go coming into it, but
Mhm.
the Dominican, Japan, and the United States have all looked really really good in the World Baseball
Mhm.
Classic. I'm a bit surprised because they are missing, like they're missing Francisco Lindor. Puerto Rico is,
Mhm.
but they're undefeated in their pool play thus far. They've
Mhm.
looked very good as well.
Korea didn't look bad either.
No, no. There's been some really good baseball played, and it's
Mhm.
producing moments that uh, like you can't bring the emotion that you're seeing out of these guys, like the
Mhm.
guys in the Dominican, the guys for Puerto Rico, there's just a different aspect to baseball for these guys when they're wearing the uniform of their countries.
Mhm. And they really get into it. They
Yeah,
enjoy it.
yeah.
So you gotta appreciate that. So okay, folks. Well, look, it's great having you. Subscribe, hit the bell, like us, leave a comment. We swear we'll answer it. And it's something that if you have topics you want us to talk about, hey, we're here. We're more than happy to give it a run. Okay. All right, folks. Have a great day. Matthew, good to have you back, and we'll check in tomorrow.